Christmas time at Universal Orlando. This is episode 58 of the Go Inform podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name's Maven. I am the hostess here on the Go Inform podcast. And today we are going to be talking about Christmas at Universal Orlando. This is episode 58 of the show, and I thank you so much for joining me today. Last time on episode 57, we talked about Christmas at Disney World. And so I'm excited today to tell you about one of my other favorite places, which is Universal Orlando, and tell you what you can expect if you visit there during the Christmas holiday season. There are show notes for today's episode, as usual. Those are over on the website at goinform.net/58. There will be lots of pictures there, a little bit of video, who knows what else. So anyway, be sure to check that out if you want to get some more information and save that over to your Pinterest board for your planning for your next trip. So planning ahead is a big deal for me, and it is the end of 2020 right now while I am producing this episode. So I am talking about Christmas at Universal, but really this is designed to tell you guys what to keep in mind if you're thinking about visiting in Christmas 2021 or beyond. So this year, because of COVID, a lot of the things I'm going to tell you about is either not happening or they've been modified. There's a lot of changes for 2020. So if you're traveling to Universal in the next couple of weeks and listening to this to get an idea of what to expect, this is going to be about what I saw last year in 2019 and what I know to be the usual events that take place at Universal during Christmas. So if you're visiting in 2020, you're going to want to do a little more checking because some of this stuff might be changed or not happening. But I think for most people listening, we're all stuck at home. It's nice to think about what we might be able to do next year. And so hopefully this will give you guys some thoughts about it. I think the idea of spending Christmas in Orlando in 2021 sounds wonderful. It's a great way to really, really get a do-over on, a whole year of a lot of stuff we missed. And you don't have to travel right on the Christmas holiday to see a lot of the special stuff that goes on both at Universal and Disney World. At Universal, Christmas starts basically right after Halloween ends. So the Halloween Horror Nights, which if you haven't already listened to my episodes about that, you should go back and listen to that. That's another cool time of year to visit the parks. That's a huge event that happens every fall at Universal. And it usually goes through the kind of the last weekend of October, first weekend of November. So as soon as that is over, then you're going to start seeing the Christmas decorations and the extra Christmas events start happening at the parks. And there is a lot that happens at Universal during Christmas. If you listen to my last chat about Disney World at Christmas, you know that they really go over the top. Universal does a lot. It's not quite as everywhere as it is in the Disney parks and on the Disney Resort property, but Universal does a ton of stuff for the Christmas holiday season. And most of it is in the Islands of Adventure and the Universal Studios theme parks. So that's where we're going to start. And then we'll talk a little bit about City Walk and the hotels too. So Universal Orlando is all about bringing to life movies, TV shows, books, the stories that we know and love. And so when you step into Universal Studios Florida or Islands of Adventure, a lot of the experience feels like stepping onto your favorite movie set or into that book that that you loved as a kid. And so they really carry that over into their Christmas events and their Christmas decor. So a lot of what you're going to experience when you visit Universal at Christmas time is like stepping into familiar stories from, Christmas specials, Christmas movies, that kind of stuff that you remember from when you were a kid. This is a little bit different than what you experience at Disney World because Universal already has stories that are being told in the parks that translate to Christmas. So, for example, they have an entire land at Island of Adventure called Seuss Landing. So naturally, there's a very well-known Dr. Seuss Christmas story. So it's really easy to kind of translate that into Christmas. And same with some of the stuff that happens in Universal Studios Florida. It's very natural for them to take what they already have and just turn it into a Christmas special, basically. So that's the kind of thing you're going to see there. And at Disney, it's more like, there's Mickey Mouse, but he's not really known as a Christmas character, but he's got, at Christmas time, he's got his special Christmas outfit and, they decorate everything like a town in Christmas and stuff like that. In Seuss Landing, it's like you've stepped into Whoville and the set of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So you do have, it's a little bit different. It's a really good kind of compliment to what you see at Disney World. And as always, I always recommend if you're going to one, you should really go see the other. And it's the same at the holidays. Okay, so let's go to the parks. So let's start in Universal Studios Florida. Universal Studios Florida, a big section of that park looks like a movie set that's supposed to be New York City. And that's kind of what the studios park is like. It's like you're stepping into the movies. And so there's this big section that's supposed to be New York. You've got the Jimmy Fallon's ride there. You've got a giant Macy's, a facade of a big Macy's department store, and like city streets that look like they're, in Brooklyn or whatever. So what Universal does is they embrace this, and for Christmas, they make it seem like you are having, the big traditional big city Christmas. So in Universal Studios Florida, probably the main holiday focal point is this huge Christmas tree. It's right in front of the Macy's, which is right next to the Mummy ride, if you guys have been kind of looking at where things are in the parks. So it's down at the end of the main street you're going to walk into the park on. Big, huge Christmas tree. And often in front of the tree, they have entertainment, including a team of Rockettes out there dancing. And it's sort of like you walked into New York on the day the Macy's parade is happening. So you get that whole like kind of feeling of lots of hubbub around and Christmas excitement and this really beautiful big Christmas tree. So there is something very special related to this Christmas tree that you've got to check out when you visit. And this is Earl the Squirrel. Earl the Squirrel lives inside the Christmas tree at Universal Studios Florida. And he is an animatronic squirrel that will just randomly pop his head out of the tree. So it's a reference to the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation movie, where the squirrel's in the tree. So this squirrel lives in the tree, and every year when the team puts the tree together, they put the squirrel in a different place. So I have some video on the show notes. It's also on my Instagram of the squirrel from last year. And I understand that this year Earl is wearing a mask. So good job, Earl. But every year he's in a different place. So when you visit, go to the tree and try to find Earl the squirrel. And usually there'll be some cast members or maybe the Rockettes hanging around, and they can help you find it. But this is just one of these fun little touches that is a reference to one of those Christmas stories that we, pretty much have seen 1,000 times. It's actually come to life here with the squirrel in the tree. There's a lot of other little fun gems all around the parks, but especially around that New York neighborhood. If you walk around, one thing I loved was the Blues Brothers perform in this area multiple times a day, and they actually drive around in their Blues Brothers car around the park, and they have the car decorated for Christmas. So they have like stockings stuck to the bumper and like garland and stuff on top of the car. It's very fun. So walk around, make a little time just to walk around and explore, because there's lots of little hidden little gems throughout the parks. Universal Studios is also the park that does parades. So typically, not right now during 2020, but usually there's an afternoon parade at Universal Studios Florida. Well, during Christmas time, there is a special holiday parade, and it's a Macy's balloon parade. So it happens in the evenings, and they really do have those giant balloons like at the Macy's parade. And they that's part of the parade, and then they have, special characters and all of that too. And it happens almost every night along the streets there at Universal Studios Florida. Now, this is super cool, you guys. If you're over 18 years old, you can actually volunteer to be one of the balloon handlers in the parade. So if you have ever watched that parade on TV and thought it would be really cool to be a balloon handler, you can do it at Universal Studios Florida. So just keep that in mind. Like, if you're trying to surprise someone with a cool Christmas and they would love to do this, then, you can actually set that up. So that's really neat. I will look for some information about that and put it in the show notes. So if you want to explore it further. And again, the show notes are at goinform.net/58. So so they have the Macy's parade most evenings. This is basically in the month of December. Also on certain nights during December, they have concerts in the park, and these are Mannheim Steamroller concerts. So like it's the total Christmas experience. They have them at the big stage that's there next to the Rip Ride Rocket. So that is another event that's happening in Universal Studios Florida. And something to know is that Universal does not charge extra for any of these Christmas events. So as I talked about last time, Disney World does a big after hours event in Magic Kingdom that has a special ticket for it. And Universal, when they do their Halloween Horror Nights, that has a special ticket. But for Christmas, all of these events, this big parade, the concerts, that is included with your park ticket. So keep that in mind. I think it makes a really great value, and make time to be in the parks in the evening so you can see these things. So I'm going to jump over to Islands of Adventure here, and then we'll talk about Harry Potter and the Wizarding World after that. Okay, so Islands of Adventure, their main thing that they have going on, aside from in the Wizarding World, is Grinchmas in Seuss Landing. They really do transform Seuss Landing into basically Whoville from How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So when you step in there, you'll see it like it is decked out. It's decorated tip to toe with all kinds of fun decorations. Seuss Landing is already a really delightful place to walk through and check out, even if you don't have little kids. I think most of us have a nostalgic relationship with Dr. Seuss, and they did a beautiful job in designing Seuss Landing. At Christmas time, it becomes even more dynamic because what's happening in Seuss Landing is you have Who's walking around and interacting with each other and with you. So they're walking all around. They're saying, "Hey, you want to take a picture? You come and talk to us, whatever." They're really mischievous and fun. You can meet the Grinch. You can meet the Grinch any time of year, but it's more special during the Christmas time. They have a special place where you get a picture with them, sort of like seeing Santa. They also have a Broadway style stage show that takes place throughout the day. That's about a half hour long. It's called Grinchmas. And so it's basically a musical version of, the original Grinch story. And again, no extra ticket price. So that takes place in a theater that's there in Seuss Landing. So that's happening. And most of the characters that you see walking around in the land, the citizens of Whoville, those are actually the actors that are in the play. So it's really fun. It's kind of like it's like you've stepped into their town, and it's just really great Christmas feel. So that's kind of the main place where you're going to get the real Christmas stuff at Islands of Adventure. And I mean, of course, that should be Whoville. You're going to see decorations throughout the rest of the park. And it's the same at Universal Studios. There's garland around, there's lights and all of that stuff. But they've kind of concentrated the main Christmas stuff in just a few spots in the parks. The other place where you're going to find Christmassy stuff is in the Wizarding World. So the Wizarding World is in both Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios. And you guys have heard me tell you this a million times, but in case you didn't know that. So you've got Diagon Alley and London over in Universal Studios, and you've got Hogsmeade Village and Hogwarts over in Islands of Adventure. Both are decorated. They've got lots of garland and stuff up. The towns basically look like the shopkeepers put up lots of decorations. So it feels really authentically decorated. Hogsmeade has more of a Christmassy feel, I think, because Hogsmeade is always winter. So there's snow on the rooftops in Hogsmeade. So if you visit in August, it still seems like winter there. So naturally adding the Christmas decorations on top of it, it just really, really feels Christmassy over there. One of the special things that they do in the Wizarding World is they do a Christmas themed projection show on Hogwarts Castle every single night. So this happens, it's about a 10-minute long show, and it's more or less continuously running through the evening. And it's really pretty. It's got a lot of the Christmas themes from the movies. So if you remember, because the Harry Potter stories take place over the course of a school year, really every single one has Christmas theming in it. So what they've done is they've taken the music from that and the Christmas events from the movies, and they've created these wonderful projections onto the castle. It's well worth, waiting for, checking out. Nice thing about these shows is that you don't usually have to arrive there too far in advance to get a good spot, and it's only lasts 10 minutes or so it doesn't take your whole evening. But be sure to make some time to check it out. And I will definitely put a video in the show notes. YouTube's got some great videos of these projection shows, so you can see what it looks like. Just like many other things, the projection show, the parade, the concerts. Those things aren't happening in 2020, but they will be surely returning in 2021. So make time to see that. Another thing that I think you must do if you visit the Wizarding World in the wintertime is get some hot butterbeer. Butterbeer is served in the Wizarding World all year round, cold and frozen. You can pretty much get any time of the year. But hot butterbeer is only available during the winter months. So it's sort of like when pumpkin spice lattes show up at Starbucks. That's what the hot butterbeer is like in the Wizarding World. So I do recommend that you make an effort to try some. I tried some. I thought it was good. Butterbeer's a little sweet for me, but I did enjoy that cup of hot butterbeer. You can't get it at every butterbeer stand either. So you'll need to go into the Hogshead pub or the Leaky Cauldron or seek out one of the kiosks that specifically has the hot butterbeer. But yeah, that's a fun kind of seasonal thing that you can do. And it's really the only place, pretty much the only place in the world you can get butterbeer at all, especially hot butterbeer, is at the Universal theme parks and at the studio where they made the movies in England. So, make sure you try the butterbeer. Okay, so besides the theme parks, Universal's hotels and City Walk, they're all decorated for the holidays too. So you can do a Christmas tree, kind of like a scavenger hunt that goes into City Walk. I think it might even include some of the hotels. So there's Christmas trees all around. And then the hotels, of course, are all decked out also. The hotels do special meals, like special dinners for Christmas, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. They also do special events for some of those dates, especially New Year's Eve. So if you happen to be staying on site for one of those holidays, make sure you check out the options for dining, because that's going to be popular. If you want to have a special meal on Christmas Eve, you probably will have that available to you in the hotels, but make sure you get a reservation far in advance. On New Year's Eve, besides the hotels doing events, City Walk traditionally does a huge party. You have to be 21 because it's basically a big club crawl. But they do a huge party every New Year's Eve at City Walk. Not in 2020, but in future years, I'm sure this will come back. So if you really want to live it up for New Year's Eve, you might want to look into that. This is also super popular with the Orlando locals. So, I'm going to talk about that again here in a minute, but you are going to want to, if you're planning to visit on one of those holidays, you're going to want to plan ahead and again, make reservations if there's something special you really want to do. In terms of staying at the hotels, I really do think that it's a good idea to stay on site. I guess I always say that. I did a whole episode about the hotels a couple of weeks ago. So if you guys want to find out more about the on-site hotels, be sure to check that out. But I think that this time of year, especially, it's nice to stay on site because you're going to be in the parks at late, most likely, because there's a lot of events in the evenings, and also because this can be really popular time to visit. So if you're staying on site, you're going to have early admission into the parks, and depending where you stay, you can get free express passes as well. And that can be a super, super valuable perk, especially if you're visiting on one of those super busy days. And it's really nice if you're thinking about that you will use early admission and you're going to stay into the park kind of late. Staying nearby right there on the resort property means it's easy to take a break in the afternoon, maybe take a nap, a rest, go to the pool, whatever, so that you can really have that long day in the parks. So staying on site, again, I totally recommend it. A couple more tips. Some of these are going to overlap with what I said last time about Disney World. there's definitely some things that you're going to want to keep in mind if you're visiting during the holiday season. One thing, though, that's unique to Universal and that I think matters always is I always recommend that you buy a 2-park ticket. A 2-park ticket will let you go between Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios Florida multiple times on the same day. Those 2 parks are right next to each other, and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is in both of them. So if you want to see the whole Wizarding World on the same day, you're going to need to have a ticket that allows you to go back and forth between the parks. And in fact, the Hogwarts Express that runs between Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade, that train, you can only ride it if you have a ticket for both parks. So buy a 2-park ticket. Universal also sells a 3-park ticket that includes Volcano Bay. In December, Volcano Bay may or may not be appealing to you. It depends on the weather and how much time you have and stuff like that. So you may not need a 3-park ticket, but definitely a 2-park. And if you want to know a little more about my reasoning for, why you should go between the parks and like how close they are together, go way back to the first episodes of the show, because I've got a whole bunch of like overview of what you'll find at Universal Orlando, park tours, tips for what to expect on your first day, and lots of information about how I like to tour between the parks and why I think it totally makes sense to see both parks on the same day. Okay, that's some more tips here. There are a lot of events in the evening, so just plan to probably be doing some of your park touring at night. Be sure to check the weather forecast before you pack for Orlando, because December, it can be really cold or hot. Usually it's dry, which is nice, so at least you don't usually get rain that time of the year, but it can be really cold, so make sure that you are packed and have the right stuff for when you're going to be there. The locals, Orlando locals, love the Universal parks. Universal has been offering them some screaming deals on annual passes, which means that there are probably even more locals there than usual. And I would expect that to carry through 2021. So be aware that especially weekends are going to be busy in the parks. There's some other dates that are super busy in December, and that is Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day. Those are usually the busiest days of the year in the theme parks. They will hit capacity, and that is a lot of people during normal operations. So if you are going to be there on those days, don't freak out. You're going to be fine. But you do need to think about strategies so that you can actually see things and enjoy yourself. Getting there early is huge. Also, if you can get an express pass, that is going to make a gigantic difference in your touring on those busy days. This is one time where I really, really recommend staying in one of those Express Pass hotels so that you get the Express Pass included with your room. That thing is going to be invaluable during the those holiday dates. So if you want to learn more about that, make sure that episode about the hotels. But I have a whole episode just about Universal Express Pass if you go back a few. So make sure you listen to that if you're planning to visit on one of those really busy days of the year. The cool thing about November and December is you've got the Christmas stuff happening pretty much that entire time in the parks. So if you have the flexibility to not travel there on Christmas, on New Year's, if you can go the first week of December or before Thanksgiving, like the beginning of November, those dates are actually some of the lowest crowd days of the entire year. So you can see a ton of stuff without having to take extraordinary efforts. and, still get all the Christmas spirit and everything without the crowds. And plus it's going to be cheaper to, stay in Orlando if you go in one of those off weeks. So if you're able to, choosing one of those not popular weeks is going to make a really big difference in your experience in the parks. And one other point about crowds, I would expect that Christmas 2021 to be especially busy at both Disney World and Universal because so many people are looking to, do that fancy special do-over holiday. So if you are planning to visit in December, especially of 2021, make sure you're planning ahead. Going to have a lot more options if you book, a couple months ahead as opposed to deciding shorter term, and do make sure you have strategies in place to deal with the crowds. But I think it's going to be totally worth making the effort to visit and see the Christmas stuff and just really have that fun vacation. Let me know, you guys, what questions you have about this, because this is a fun topic for me. And I will keep the blog post updated with anything I find that I think you need to know. That's going to be, again, over at goinform.net/58. And you guys can reach out to me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm at GoInformNet over there. I will be posting some fun stuff from the parks from my trip last year in December of 2019 up all month here on Instagram. So watch for that. And thanks, you guys, for joining me. Thanks for helping me get through 2020. This has really been a good project for this year, and I'm looking forward to getting a whole bunch more cool stuff out to you guys in the new year. So have a wonderful holiday season. Have a great new year. And I hope when you get to travel that you have a stupendous vacation.